and we'll probably tell the story sometime on Talking Shop, the podcast at some point. But we just felt like it was time to try and broaden our horizons into America, and TNA was the first ones that reached out. And then at that same time, I remember walking around the arenas with Rocky and like talking to him. Like I'd be telling him what's going on. Each day was a new thing, like something else happened. We got a different offer, or this happened, and then WWE came along calling, and it was like, oh man. And then money started to become involved. Yeah. It was like we gotta take a backflip into America, babe. And then here we are changing the game again, like we did then.
Rocky, how are you feeling when they're telling you all this? Because obviously, I remember a couple of years ago you signed like a multi-year extension with New Japan and all that. You seem pretty firmly ingrained there. You got
Rock
friends.
Was thinking, I'm about to get paid. Thanks, boys. Talk to me, Rock. Tell him, Rock.
Like what series of emotions go through you at that point?
I mean, 2015. So I'm thinking like, first I'm just thinking, oh shit, my friends are leaving. Like, oh
yeah,
fuck, like. What am I personally gonna do, to get through these tours and stuff? But outside of that, I mean, I'm happy for them, especially at that time. I was like, well, you guys got to try it and go for it, because if you guys do this, then just the rest of it will follow, right? So it's just gonna make all of the wrestlers in New Japan Pro Wrestling even more worth more. So like outside of New Japan, inside New Japan. So it's kind of a necessary evolution and step that somebody had to make and, revolutionize. We always talk about the revolution, there's been a couple of revolutions in New Japan and that's definitely one of them,
Yeah, we caused that revolution to happen.
Shinsuke too, right at that time, right?
Shinsuke too.
AJ and Shinsuke, that was like,
So obviously this doesn't reflect on the modern Impact regime, because there's a completely different regime now than when you all were talking to them. But in January, after it became clear you all were heading to WWE, there were some sour grapes from TNA. Like, they were putting out there, like, congratulations to the new signings of WWE before you all appeared on TV.
That was pretty weird, right?
It was very weird.
And I like how they called AJ, but everybody was Chad Allegra, Drew Hankinson, and AJ Styles, but they wouldn't call him Allen, or so was it? Or there was something weird like that.
They don't have the same privileges as Undertaker has, obviously.
There was some weird shit coming out. Like, the first thing they released was so sour grapes it made it looked weird. It had a weird feel to it. But I'm still waiting on all the thank you cards from all the boys who got raises when we did make that move to America. I'm hoping that they'll show up with some Amazon gift cards or something in the coming weeks.
We'll say when we left, man, like, hey,
hint, wink, wink.
When me, Shinsuke, Gallows, and AJ left to America, I mean, I will say a lot of guys. I mean, New Japan started locking people up with full-time contracts that they weren't particularly doing because they didn't have to. It was just the way. It's just the game changed then. And I'm glad that it did, and none of it was because we were mad at New Japan. And New Japan's we left properly. We kept the relationships properly, and we're excited to head back when the time's right.
Rocky, how did you see things change when there was that exodus of Gallows, Anderson, Nakamura? Like, did you notice like a real shift in a lot? Like, were they pushing you, other people, like, hey, we got to get you signed up. We got to make sure.
Right. Well, I think that definitely all of us are pretty, re-signed and locked in for multi-years after that, pretty quickly. Definitely that was contract season. So it's like January-ish. So I remember like Tama re-signed, I re-signed, bunch of like pretty much everybody re-signed. And then, but I know like outside of it, everybody was saying, oh, New Japan, oh, they're going to be so screwed. They're going to be so screwed. Like AJ's leaving, Gallows and Anderson, Shinsuke. And then that's like the one thing that I knew we weren't going to be screwed in the fact, like, yeah, it's a big deal that all these guys are leaving, but like, there's always, so many bullets in the chamber ready to go. So, there was the rise of Naito and LIJ, the Bullet Club, Kenny, the Bucks, and, that generation of the Bullet Club, that was the rise of that, so it's like, New Japan always seems to do well, even though like every couple of years this is going to happen. It's just a natural progression of professional wrestling, but I think one thing that New Japan is good at is they always got the next generation kind of ready to go when something like this does happen and there's a major shift.
Yeah, and
crazy. It's crazy. We don't let Rocky talk often, and he really has good things to say. Wow.
He does.
Yeah.
Smart and articulate. Wow.
Yeah,
Wow, Rock, what did you?
Just here for the paycheck.
Gallows, cut him off real quick. Jesus, he was making too much sense.
Shut the fuck up. Anyway, here's what
And New Japan, especially with Bullet Club, you see that because when Devitt left, a lot of people are like, okay, who will fill his spot? Well, there's AJ Styles, a guy who had already been at the top for 15 years at that point. Well, who's going to be ready when he leaves? Well, it's Kenny Omega. Yeah, well, what about him? And then Switchblade.